My name is Emily James. I'm 32 years old, and the night before my sister's wedding, my parents told me I wasn't welcome unless I handed them $500,000. They expected me to beg for a seat, but I walked out instead. What they didn't know was that months earlier, the groom's family had already asked me to sponsor the wedding, and I agreed, under one condition. No one would know until the moment I chose. So when the ceremony began and the groom's father called my name, the hall went silent, every head turning as my parents froze in their seats, realizing too late that the daughter they tried to cut out had been holding all the cards, and it's just the beginning of their downfall. The night before the wedding, the air inside my parents' home was thick with the smell of expensive flowers and stress. Staff hurried around, arranging centerpieces and adjusting ribbons, but my mother's sharp eyes were fixed only on me. She beckoned me into the study with that same stiff smile she always wore when she wanted something. My father was already waiting, hands folded behind his back, as if he were presiding over a business meeting rather than speaking to his own daughter. "Let's not waste time," my mother began, her voice smooth but cutting. "If you want to attend your sister's wedding tomorrow, you'll contribute $500,000. Otherwise, you'll stay home." The words landed like a slap, though I didn't flinch. I had grown used to their demands, the way they dressed manipulation as duty, twisting every family moment into a ledger. They had never asked me to join them, only to pay my way into their approval. My father added, "It's a fair request. Think of it as your responsibility as part of this family." I stood silently, letting them bask in their confidence. They thought I would cave, just as I always had when guilt was wrapped in parental expectation. But this time, the smug tilt of their chins, the casual cruelty in their tone, only amused me. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "Not tonight," I said, calm and deliberate before walking out. Their faces registered irritation, but they didn't chase me. To them, it was simple. If I wouldn't pay, I wouldn't come. They thought they'd won. They had no idea, because months earlier, the groom's family had reached out to me privately. They weren't naive. They'd seen how my parents spoke to me, how they dismissed me at dinners, how they treated me like a wallet rather than a daughter. The groom's mother, with a kindness that felt foreign compared to my own family, had sat across from me in a quiet cafe and said, "We don't like how they treat you, and we don't need your money, but we do need someone we can trust." They were struggling with expenses, not because they were poor, but because my parents' demands for extravagance had pushed everything beyond reason. I agreed to step in, but I had a single condition. My name would remain unspoken until the day itself. I wanted nothing in return but timing. I wanted the truth to reveal itself like a blade unsheathed at the perfect moment. So, when I left my parents' house that night, my chest wasn't heavy. There was no sorrow in their ultimatum, no ache for the seat they had tried to deny me. There was only anticipation. The next day arrived with the kind of perfection my parents craved. Guests filled the grand hall dressed in elegance, the air humming with polite laughter and strings from a live quartet. My sister glowed in her gown, oblivious to the storm waiting at the edges of the celebration. I stayed in the background, silent, watching my parents move like royalty among their friends, confident that I had been erased. Then came the moment. The ceremony ended, applause thundered, and the groom's father rose. He tapped the microphone once, and the room hushed. With a steady voice, he said, "We want to honor the person who made this wedding possible, whose generosity carried us through when things felt impossible." He paused, a deliberate weight in the silence. "Please join me in thanking the true sponsor of this celebration." He spoke my name. The hall shifted. Heads turned. 100 eyes fell on me as I stepped forward. My heels struck the floor in measured rhythm, each step echoing louder than the last. My parents stood frozen, pale, mouths slightly open as if they'd misheard. My mother's hand gripped my father's arm, nails digging into his sleeve. I stopped at the front, beside the groom's family, as they welcomed me with warmth my own blood had never given. My name was repeated again, followed by applause, genuine and unforced. The guests clapped, smiling, whispering among themselves. My parents didn't move. They were trapped in the realization The daughter they had tried to exclude had been the one holding the strings all along. And as I looked out at their drained faces, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. The applause that followed my name had barely faded when whispers started to ripple across the hall. Guests leaned toward one another, some disguising their shock with forced smiles while others looked directly at my parents, waiting for their reaction. My mother's face remained stiff, her expression frozen in a mask that was slipping by the second. My father, usually quick with charming lines for the crowd, stood rigid, jaw locked, unable to speak. The groom's family continued as if nothing were out of place. The father, calm and deliberate, handed me the microphone. "We owe her more than gratitude," he said firmly. "This day exists because of her generosity, because she chose to support love rather than let pride interfere. We are proud to call her family." I accepted the microphone without hesitation. My voice, steady and clear, carried through the hall. I only wanted to see my sister happy today. Everything else is secondary. I didn't add anything more. I didn't need to. My parents' silence screamed louder than anything I could have said. The guests clapped again, this time louder. My sister, still holding her bouquet, blinked at me with surprise but not anger. If anything, her expression softened. It was the first time in years she had looked at me without judgment. I returned the microphone and stepped aside. My parents remained still, but I caught the way my mother's hands trembled as she adjusted her bracelet. They had been exposed in front of everyone they worked so hard to impress. For them, appearances were everything. And in one moment, those appearances had cracked wide open. Dinner was served, courses flowing across long tables, but the tension at the head table was impossible to ignore. I sat at the groom's family's side, a place of honor I had not asked for, but was deliberately given. My parents sat opposite, their conversations forced, laughter sharp and hollow. Guests who once clung to their every word now drifted toward me, offering polite thanks, small compliments, casual remarks about how kind it was of me to step in. Every handshake, every smile only deepened the colorless look on my parents' faces. For once, the spotlight wasn't theirs. It was mine, and not because I demanded it, but because truth had pulled it toward me. Midway through the meal, my father leaned toward my mother, his whisper sharp enough to cut. "We have to fix this." She nodded slightly, her lips barely moving, her eyes darting across the room like a trapped animal searching for an exit. They tried to regain ground during the speeches. My father took the microphone after the maid of honor and began with a laugh. "We are so grateful for everyone who came tonight," he said, voice too loud, too polished. "And, of course, for all the contributions that made this possible." He glanced in my direction, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Family is about unity, after all. But the words rang false. People heard it. The polite applause that followed was thin, nothing compared to the warmth that had filled the room earlier. My father's attempt at control had slipped through his hands. The night carried on with music and dancing. I stayed near the edges, watching. My sister came to me once, bouquet still clutched, her voice low so others wouldn't hear. "I didn't know," she whispered. "They never told me." Her gaze was steady, her tone more honest than I expected. "Thank you." Her sincerity caught me off guard. I had prepared myself for resentment, for her siding with them out of habit. Instead, she looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Across the room, my parents were drowning in forced conversations. Their closest friends were asking questions they didn't want to answer, how they hadn't mentioned my involvement, why they hadn't acknowledged me sooner. Every polite inquiry was another crack in their carefully built facade. Later, as the music swelled and guests filled the dance floor, my father finally approached me. His smile was brittle, his voice quiet enough to hide behind the noise. "You should have told us," he said. I met his eyes. "Would you have let me attend if I hadn't?" He hesitated, and that pause was enough. We both knew the answer. He would have barred me at the door if I hadn't met his price. My mother joined him, her voice sharp, though she tried to soften it for the sake of anyone watching. "You embarrassed us," she said. "No," I replied, calm and even. You embarrassed yourselves. For the first time in my life, they didn't have a response. They turned and walked away, shoulders stiff, retreating into the crowd they no longer controlled. The rest of the evening unfolded with a strange sense of balance. The groom's family treated me as though I had always been theirs. Guests continued to approach, some out of curiosity, others out of genuine respect. My parents stayed distant, their faces strained, their laughter brittle whenever they were forced into conversation. It became clear to everyone that night that the hierarchy had shifted. I wasn't the outsider anymore. My parents had built their reputation on power, on control, on appearances. And in a single evening, that foundation had cracked. The wedding ended with cheers, music, and bright smiles, but underneath the glow of celebration, something darker simmered. My parents avoided me the entire night, retreating into silence, hiding behind strained laughter and hollow pleasantries. Yet I knew them well enough to understand silence was never the end. It was only a pause before they struck back. The morning after, I received the call I had been waiting for. My father's voice carried the same controlled tone he used in business meetings, but I heard the strain underneath. "We need to talk. Come to the house." I agreed without hesitation. This time, I wasn't walking into their territory as the child they controlled. I was walking in as someone they couldn't touch anymore. When I arrived, the house looked as polished as ever. The marble floors gleamed, the walls lined with carefully chosen art, but the tension inside was heavy. My mother sat upright on the sofa, hands clasped tightly together, her face pale but set. My father stood near the fireplace, a glass of water untouched on the mantel, his posture stiff, as though bracing for a fight. He didn't waste time. "You humiliated us." I met his gaze calmly. "You humiliated yourselves when you demanded money as the price for your approval. I only gave the truth a stage." My mother leaned forward. "Do you understand what you've done? People are questioning us. Our friends think we kept secrets, that we tried to hide your involvement. Our reputation is at risk." The desperation in her voice was clear. For them, reputation had always been more valuable than love, more precious than honesty. They weren't angry because of what I did. They were angry because I had exposed them in front of an audience. "You created this," I said. "You tried to bar me from my sister's wedding unless I paid you $500,000. If you hadn't done that, none of this would have happened." My father's face tightened. "We were testing you. We wanted to see if you were committed to this family." I let out a sharp laugh. "You don't test family with ultimatums. You don't sell access to your daughter's wedding. That wasn't a test, it was extortion." Silence stretched between us. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting to my father, searching for an answer he didn't have. Finally, my father spoke again, his tone colder now. "If you want a place in this family, you need to show loyalty. That means protecting us, not exposing us." I shook my head. "I don't need a place in this family. I've built a life on my own. I'm not your pawn, and I won't be your wallet. What I did wasn't to protect you. It was to protect myself from you." The words cut through the room like a blade. For the first time, I saw something crack in my mother's expression. Not anger, not superiority, but fear. Fear that the control they had held over me all my life was gone. "I'm done letting you dictate my worth," I continued. "You wanted to erase me, but the truth is, you need me more than I'll ever need you." My father's fists clenched at his sides, his face hardening, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. Every argument he had used for years, loyalty, duty, appearance, was useless now. I stood, my voice steady as I gave them my final words. "You tried to ban me from my sister's wedding, and instead, you banned yourselves from respect. That was your choice. I don't owe you anything anymore." I turned and walked out, leaving them sitting in their perfectly decorated house, surrounded by everything they valued, yet stripped of the one thing they had always taken for granted: control. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was impossible for them to contain. Friends whispered behind their backs. Questions about why they had excluded me at first turned into doubts about their integrity. Business partners grew cautious, no longer impressed by their charm. The carefully curated image they had spent decades building was collapsing, piece by piece. Meanwhile, my life remained untouched by their chaos. The groom's family welcomed me as if I were their own, grateful and unpretentious. My sister reached out often, her calls genuine, her voice lighter without the shadow of our parents' manipulation hanging over her. And my parents? They learned what it meant to be outsiders, the very position they had tried to trap me in all my life. Only this time, there was no stage, no announcement, no applause to soften the blow. There was just silence, the kind they couldn't turn into power.